Hi, this is Jimmy from The Productive Engineer, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use Obsidian Notes. Obsidian Notes is a very interesting note-taking application. It's based on Markdown. It leverages things like backlinks and knowledge graphs to create a really compelling and interesting note-taking experience. So stay tuned. Okay, let's get started. The first thing you need to do is to download Obsidian, and you can do that at obsidian.md. The MD stands for Markdown. Once you're at the site, as you can see here on my browser, you just come here, you click Get Obsidian. It is a desktop application. There is no mobile application that I'm aware of for Obsidian. However, we'll talk about how you can potentially leverage Obsidian notes that you've created in Obsidian on your mobile devices. You can do that using other applications that support Markdown, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the first thing you want to do is click on Get Obsidian. It'll download, and then you just install it. The installation process is pretty simple, and then once you've installed it, it should look something like this. It's a very clean interface. It supports both the dark mode and a light mode. I'm using dark mode because it's easier on my eyes. Certainly you can change it into light mode by coming over here, down here to the bottom where it says settings, go to appearance, and then, as you see here, you have a base theme. Right now it's dark. If I change it to light, as you can see, it'll populate and become light. And now this is all light. I personally don't like the light one. I like it darker better, so I'm gonna go back and change it. Pretty straightforward. There's also third-party themes community themes, excuse me, that you can install. So there's actually a community theme area where you can go and basically click on browse, and then there's a bunch of different themes here. You can sort by your current themes. So right now I have dark themes only, even though some of these look light. If I click up here, that'll change. I'll have more options. But for now, just choose dark themes only. And if I wanted one of these themes, I can certainly choose it. But I like the default theme. I think it's simple, but it's clear. I like the super darkness of the theme, so I'll keep that. We'll close that out, and we'll come back to the main pane. The main pane here is, again, very clean, very simple. If we start from, this is the main window area. This is where you'll be editing files, creating and editing files. You can see here, you can create a new file by using the Command N or Control N on Windows, Command or Control O. Up here, in this little tab, this is the File Explorer tab. You can create a new note here by clicking that. We'll do that in a little bit. You can create a folder. Basically, it's using files and folders, much like your desktop would use. So you can create a folder and then put your files in. So I'll just do that here real quick, and I'll say YouTube, YT for YouTube, and then click New Note, and say First Note. And now I have this note. If I want to put it in the YouTube folder, I can just click and drag it. And now you can see it's indented underneath this YouTube folder. I can collapse that, I can expand that, but that's how you create a note real quick, and that's how you create a folder. Pretty simple. If you ever created a folder or a file on a computer, it's the same type of function. Very basic. You can also sort. You can change the sort order here from A to Z, Z to A, or whether your desktop was modified from new to old or old to new, as well as created time, new to old or old to new. So we'll just do created time, new to old. And as you can see, it now structures it in order of newest to oldest from when it was created. The first tab I really want to show you here is sort of over here on the left-hand side, this little left-hand mini panel. You have the Open Quick Switcher, the Open Graph View, and Open Markdown Importer. So the first thing I'm going to look at is this Quick Switcher. That's really how you open and create files. So when you click it, it brings up this little menu here, and obviously, the first thing it's going to show me is my files. If I start typing, it'll actually narrow down based upon what I'm typing in real time to like the files that I'm using. In this case, I typed in backlinks, and it shows the notes that have backlinks in the title. Exit it out. If I wanted to create a new test doc, you can see that that doesn't exist, so it's going to tell me no notes found. But I can hit enter, and it'll create it, as you can see here. So if I hit enter, now I have this new test doc. I'll put it back in the YouTube folder here just to keep it clean. And now, again, if we did that sort, I can do sort from created time old to new. You see the first note was created before that. If I change it back, it sorts within the folder. So pretty cool, pretty simple. Now the next one, and we're going to cover this a little further later on in the video, is the graph view. So if I click this, all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, what just happened to my window? Well, what happened to your window is, now I'm going to zoom using my scroll key on my mouse. I can scroll in and out on this. This shows all the interlinking between all the notes that I have in my Obsidian vault. And we're going to talk about vaults in a second, but this actually just shows you all the notes that I have in this vault and where they connect. So I have it also includes things like I have a tag. So if I come in here real quick and I put in hashtag tutorial, for example, if I go back to graph view, you should now see, as I move this around a little bit, that tutorials is now on 2 notes, not just the one that it was on before. So that's really cool. It basically shows all the interrelationships between your notes. And I find this very valuable. As you start adding more and more notes, what will happen is you'll start to realize that certain notes relate to each other in different ways. And you also get to see the structure. Like you can see here, I actually have an orphan, something that's not connected to anything, which is this external links note that's not actually connected to anything. Same thing here at this one. Whereas other notes like note taking are connected to 2 different ones. So it's a pretty cool way to see how your notes lay out. And we'll talk about this in a little while, but I just wanted to show it to you real quick because it is on the left-hand panel. And I just wanted to, for sake of completeness, I wanted to show it to you real quick. If you come down here to the bottom panel, you can see the open another vault. And this is where I want to talk about vaults. So I'm going to click that real quick. And you can see that it brings me up to the screen here. And I have the vaults that I have, the default help one that shows up by default. Vaulty is actually the default vault you get to work in. And all a vault is, think of it as like a master directory where all your files and folders work that are related could go. So for example, you can see here I have a test vault. If I click that, in this new window here, you see it opened up. I have nothing in it, but now it's a different vault. Notice that those files that are over here in Vaulty are not in my test vault. That's because it's a separate directory. Think of it that way. It's probably the easiest way to think of it. A master directory. And then if I create folders in here, notice that when I create it, it doesn't happen over here. It just happens over here. I can say test, enter, and then I have this. And then I put a document here, untitled, I can call it new note. And I can drag it in here just like we did last time. But it's a separate vault. It's distinct from this. And as a result, when I click graph view, you notice I only have that one little note there. So I'm going to close that out. We'll go back into this real quick. And as you can see, so those are my vaults that I have. And notice now test vault 1 is here. You can also, you can open a folder as a vault. So if you have like a folder of existing Markdown files that you want to start using Obsidian with, you can actually create that as a vault. If you have like a master folder that contains all those Markdown files, you can actually click and open that. You can also create a new vault, and basically what you do there is just click create, and then you come here, you give it a vault name. So let's say another test vault. And then I can come down here to browse. And then I can put it here in, let's just put it on my Drobo and hit open. And then if I hit create, it's going to put a folder, basically. That's exactly what this is. In my Drobo, on my Drobo main directory called another test vault. And if I hit that and then come back in here, you'll see that another test vault now shows up as a vault option. I can also delete it by just clicking the X. I can do the same thing here at this other one. And now they're gone. So very straightforward. The other thing here is you have a help vault, which basically contains all the help files for Obsidian. So when would I want to use a vault versus segmenting vaults? Like if you have, like, I call it separation of concerns, where like you might have like notes that are dedicated to a specific project or specific aspect of your life that you want to keep separate from other pieces. So if you have a side hustle, for example, you might want to create a separate vault for that. If you have a vault that maybe using Dropdown, you're having other users be able to access, you might want to create a separate vault, put that in something like Dropbox or iCloud or something like that so people can share it and use those files, or you can use those files on the go. Whereas other vaults you might only want to have on your native computer so that you only have access to it, in which case you'd create that on your local computer. You obviously just keep the files there. So it's a great deal of flexibility there. Now, the one thing I will note that you probably just sort of inferred from what I just said is that Obsidian is a local desktop type application. It's not a cloud-based service. So there's no sort of native file ability to share your files in and of itself within Obsidian. But the way you would do that, because it's all Markdown files, is you would just save that vault in something like Dropbox or iCloud or whatever you're using. And in that way you can access those files. Whether you have Obsidian on a laptop somewhere else, you can pull up those files from your laptop because those files are stored in Dropbox and they'll sync everywhere, or iCloud. Or if you're using a mobile device, while there's not an Obsidian application for iOS and Android, you can use other third-party Markdown editors to edit those files. And the great thing about Markdown is you write it in Markdown and then you save that file, you go back, get back home, or you get back on your native computer and open up Obsidian. Those changes will be in there just fine because you're using an open standard type format. So pretty cool. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, let's close up the vaults, is creating files. So let's just create a very simple note. Let's call this our first note. And as I mentioned earlier, Obsidian uses Markdown for text formatting. So as a result, you're not going to see like in Microsoft Word, Google Docs, things like that, or another note-taking application like Evernote, where you have like a toolbar that has like a bold button and an italics button and things like that. Instead, what you're going to use is Markdown. And Markdown is, think of it as a syntactic way of defining how you want something to be formatted by using certain symbols. So let's say I wanted to have a heading. I can do a heading one by taking pound space and say heading. This is my heading, main heading, for example. And then here I could come down and say this is a subheading by using 2 pounds. I can do 3 to make it even smaller. This is a sub. This is an H. We call this an H3 header. So if you look at here, H1, H2, H3. For example, if I want to do an H4, I can just do you get the idea. And so that's how you would do headings. Now you say, well, this looks horrible. Like, I can't see how my note's supposed to look like. What do I do? Like, well, the way I do it, and the way most people do it, is that you render this Markdown file in something that can preview it. And in Obsidian, there's a native previewer for Markdown. And all you do is you come over here to there's more options, vertical ellipses. You click on that. And then what I typically do here is I do split vertically. And it actually takes my note and creates a duplicate of it. It doesn't really create a duplicate, but it gives me like another view of the same note here. And then when you're working on notes, there's 2 modes. There's what we call edit mode, which is what this mode is, where it literally is me typing in whatever I want and editing the note. And as you can see over here, there's this little preview button here. If I click that, it changes to a pencil, which means that if I click that, when I click it when it's a pencil, it turns it into edit mode. If I click it when it's in the preview icon, it goes into preview mode. And as you can see, the formatting here is now consistent with what you would expect. My main heading, subheading, H3, H4. If I come over here and I type in, this is, of course, it'd help if I use the proper bolded text. As you can see, you just use 2 asterisks to indicate bold. If I want to do italicized, this is 1. Oops. Text. You get the idea. So that's how you format your text, is actually by doing it as you're typing. Now, takes something to get used to. If you've ever used applications like Bare Notes, you're probably already familiar with Markdown. But if you're coming in new, it takes a little bit to get used to. I'll actually put a link in my description for a nice Markdown cheat sheet that gives you the basics of what you'll be doing. So you can do things like ordered list by just doing 1 dot space, and then like the first item, second item, third item, etc. And then if you want to get out of it, you just hit enter twice, and it breaks it out. If you want to do a bulleted list, you just hit dash space, excuse me. And this is sort of what we call an unordered list. So this is item A, item B, item C. And if I want to get out of it, enter twice. I'm out of that. And as you can see, the dashes here render as bullet points in this. And the nice thing about this, again, like I referenced earlier, if I decide I don't want to use Obsidian anymore, I don't have to do any like fancy exporting or anything to get my notes out. It's already in an open format, and I can use a variety of applications like Bear. I'm trying to think of some other Markdown editors. There's a variety of them out there that read Markdown, and you can just start using those and pick up without losing anything, which is really cool. So that's how you do a lot of the basic Markdown stuff. I'm going to actually switch over here to text editing, and you can see if I close this out and then I create another split vertical pane and change that to preview, you can see that we have way more than I just typed before. So you have things like block quotes. You have obviously the list. You can actually put code in. So if you want to have code snippets inside your note, you can do that, and it'll show up as a code block. You can put links in. So this is probably something you'll be doing a lot, right? When you create notes, a lot of times you might want to put a note in, a link in to something that you have. So for example, I can sit here, I can come down here and say, for awesome tips, go to my website. And what I could do here is I can just type website, for example, close that, and then create parentheses, and then type in my example. And now this, when you look at the actual text that gets rendered, it just looks like a link on the website. When I click it, it works just like normal. Of course, I'll pull it over, and it brings me up to my website, which you see I already have a beginner's guide to Obsidian notes on my website. If you haven't checked out my website, you should check it out. It's awesome. And come back here. You can also do things like checkboxes. So you can have like a little tiny to-do list. Like if you're creating a note, it's pretty simple, straightforward. You just create, so if I wanted to create a new list, I could do like close bracket, X, close, space. This is a checked box, enter. And as you can see, it shows up as this is a checked box. And if I come down here to the next item, you can see it's actually, this is unchecked. And now it's unchecked. Now, one of the cool things is I can come over here and I can uncheck this, and it unchecks over here. I can click here, click here, click here, and then I can just mess around with it. So unchecked, unchecked, I can put it back. So these are clickable. So obviously, if they weren't clickable, what would be the point? If I just wanted to show that to you. You could actually even create tables using the syntax for creating a table. And again, I put the cheat sheet in the description, so how you do this. But you actually create tables inside of Obsidian Notes as well, and they look pretty good. So that's how you do text editing inside of Obsidian. Next, I want to show you how to create a note. Now, we already did that before. I can just click New Note. I'm going to close this over here, and you can see I can say this is a test note. Let's say this is test notes. Okay, so it's a very simple note. That's one way to create a note. But what if I'm writing in a document? So let's say instead of test, this is my project page. And let's say I'm typing in my project, like goals of project. Right, maybe that's, not how to type, Jim. For example. Actually, I'm going to always create that split vertically pane so you can see what I'm doing as I do it. And I can come down here, for example, and let's say I wanted to have a key for example, and the first thing I wanted to have in here is an item here that might be timeline, project timeline, right? Now, I might not have that document created yet, and I could either say, you know what, let me go create that document right now, or I can create a placeholder link by hitting the open brace to bring up the link menu, and then I can type in sample project timeline. And that's how you do basic backlinking, internal linking here inside of Obsidian Notes, and then I hit enter. That document doesn't actually exist. If you look over here, you don't see it in my file folder here. And then if I come over here, and let's say meeting notes. Deliverable page. These are just random pages, right? And as you can see, they render as links over here. Now, I'm going to show you something pretty cool. If I click the project timeline and it opens, a couple things happen. That document is now actually a document. That link became a document. It's still linked here, but now it's a document. And if I come over here, you can see sample project timeline over here. If I close out of this and I split this pane again, and if we come down here to meeting notes, notice right now meeting notes is not in here, but if I click it, if I come over here, put it in preview mode first, and click meeting notes, you'll see that meeting notes is now here as well. And I can do the same thing here. So I can actually come over here change this and just click this again. And then we close these out. And then if I want to open up my project page, it has my links in here. Now let's say I don't want a deliverable page on this. Like I don't want a link to it in this document. Like maybe I was working in an unrelated document. I realized that I might be working in this document, and I was like, oh crap, I need a note for tracking a course I'm working on. So I might say web dev course notes. Learn how to spell course notes, for example. Create that, and then quickly go over here. And then let's say I was doing some more typing, blah 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 blah, whatever it is. And then later, once I finish, I can come over here, just click web dev dev course. You see it opens. Go back to my project timeline, my project page. I can remove this link. I can remove this link, and notice it's no longer linked here, but my web dev course notes page still exists. That's really cool because I find myself using this fairly often because you're in a train of thought, right? You're writing, you're creating, you're maybe working on a course, maybe you're writing a document, and you realize that you need to create another note to do something later, right? So but you don't want to leave what you're doing, but you want to ensure that you create the notes so that way when you look at your notes, they get sorted by newest to oldest. You can see there's, you say, oh, don't forget to do that. I can just create that note, create a link to that note, continue working on my existing document, then just change over, click that, and then it creates that document, and I can delete that link if I need to. So very quick way of creating documents if you don't actually want to start working on that document, but you just want to create a reference point for that so you can go work on it later. So very straightforward. One of the other things you could do, we talked about it a little bit earlier, is I can add tags. So let's say I wanted to create a tag for this that's called, projects. The key to creating a tag is the £, no space. Very important not to put a space, because if you put a space, it's going to think it's a heading. So if I put space heading 1, it's a heading. And I'll come over here, I'll split the page so you can see, and turn it to preview. You see that it's a heading, but if I do this £, and then I do project, notice that views it as a project. And if I click on project here, what it will do is it'll show me, it'll bring up the search icon here, the search tab, and show me all the pages that have the tag project in it, which is really cool. If I came over here and removed it, notice that there's no matches found. But if I come back in here, project, now it shows back up. So a very quick and easy way of doing that. And again, going back to the knowledge graph, if you go back to the knowledge graph now, and I close this, I'm going to close this real quick so you can see it. Now you should see project should be on here, yep, as a tag. It's linked to the project page. So let's say I can open this page by just clicking on the node, and I can just add project here as a tag. Go back to the knowledge graph, and now there should be 2 links to the project. And you see project timeline and project page now have links to the tag project. Now you say this gets pretty messy pretty quick. Fortunately, if I can learn how to talk, fortunately, they've created filters. So you can come down here to filters. I have files that are orphans, right? Where they like it's just external link one. It's not linked to anything. So if I don't want to see the orphans, I can just turn that off. You can see it disappeared. Same thing with tags. If I just want to see my pages relationships and not necessarily my tag relationships, I can turn that off as well by clicking this here, and that makes that disappear as well. And I find myself using that a lot if I just want to, if I have something very specific I want to look at. So I can pull these things around, move them around. You can actually move them. You can actually also come here to display. You can put arrows. So let's say you want to see like the relationship of the relationship. So what it'll do, it's hard to see here, but you can see like the little arrowheads here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it. And you can do things like node size. So you can make the circles bigger by just increasing them, or pulling down the slider here. You can also do the link thickness. So if you're having trouble seeing the links, you can make them thicker, and that should actually help with the arrow as well. And if text fade fresh, it makes it brighter or darker. So I'll just leave it normal. And then you have forces, which shows you like sort of how the nodes relate to each other. So I can do the center force and move them separate away, pull them tighter. The repel forces, So how each node's kind of repel from each other. Link force, I can move that as well. You can kind of see that one's not really doing as much. I'm not sure what that one does, to be honest with you. In the link distance, I can move how far the links are between the things or tighten them up real tight if I'm struggling for space. So, very cool. You can really customize the way this looks. And that's how you use Graph View. Okay, so now I'm back in my sample timeline page. And let's say I wanted to add a backlink to my project page. So when I'm working here, I have a quick link that can sort of relate it back to the master project page. So what I can do here is just hit that double open bracket and type in project until it gets the project page, and then click that, and I'll see a link to the project page. If I come over here again, split vertically. Actually, you know, I'll split this one horizontally just to show you what that looks like. So you can split it horizontally. Well, if you're more of a top-down person rather than left-right person, I work left to right because that's the way we read, and that's sort of the way I work. But you can make it top-down as well, where you can have, you know, what you're typing in here and then the preview on the bottom here. I'll just do that real quick. And you can see I have my preview here. If I come in here and say, maybe create a heading here that says random heading. I'm really not feeling creative. You can see that that types in as an H1 as an example. That I have a backlink here. You should now see that sample project timeline has a backlink to a bidirectional link because there's a. You see that now the arrows are both pointed both ways. That means that project page has a backlink to sample project timeline, and sample project timeline has a backlink to project page. So that shows the relationship here. Versus here, like Backlinks Backlinks Obsidian has a link to on that page to testing text editing Obsidian, but this page doesn't have a link back to this. So it's a one-way link. This is a link for going from here to here, but there's not a link going from here to here. Whereas in this scenario, because I set up the link, I have a bidirectional link. I have a link. I get a project page going to here, to the timeline, and have a link on the timeline page going back to the project page. So you can get very creative. And the great thing about this is, if I can pull this down a little bit, I'll close this off. I'll close this. You can see here, and I'll make this a little bigger, and pull it up. You can see that these bidirectional links and these links, all these are shown. So you can see, like, right now, everything's separate. If I were to create, you know, and these are files that are linked. So, like, this importing audio and video has a link to an MP4 file. And I'm going to show you how to import those in a minute. This is an image. I probably should have given it a better name. But this importing image has a link to an image. So if I go back to Graph View, you can see that to my image here. And say here, I have a PDF here. I have a PDF page that has a link to a PDF. So the thing I like about Graph View is it really kind of ties everything together. It makes it easier for me to see how my notes relate to each other, and, you know, sort of the pockets of information that I've learned. The last thing I want to cover today is how to import files into a note in Obsidian. So I'm going to start with an image of my dog here. That's Moose. He's the best dog in the world. Totally unbiased opinion. And let's say I want to add it to this note. So let's say this is an image of my dog. And I wanted to put it like right there. I can just click and drag that image right onto it. And it'll create a link to that image in my document. And you also notice that over here it adds that file, the C1 file here, this one right here, to my note. Now you say, well, that's not what I want to see. I don't want to see a link. I want to see the picture. Fair enough. So what we do is here we go here. We can do a split vertical, and then just change it to preview, and you can see there's a picture of my lovely dog there. Let's say I wanted to add a video. I can come over here to my video file. Just help somebody click and just drag that in, and there it is. And you see there's a picture of me looking a little disheveled during one of the intros to one of my earlier videos. And I have a link right there. And notice, as we saw earlier, that video file is now added to my folder here, to my vault here, excuse me, in Obsidian. Lastly, let's say I wanted to add a PDF. So I have a PDF here, the Markdown reference I was referring to earlier. I can just click and drag that in. Now, notice this is a little different. It's not quite what you probably expected when I dragged it in. You probably were expecting to see some sort of window with the actual PDF in it, you actually see the content. It's kind of like what you see when you do drag it into Notion, or if you drag it into Evernote, for example, right? You see the actual PDF. Instead, what you do is you get a reference to the title of the document, and you get a open in default app icon here. So I'm going to click that just to show you what it looks like, and it launches Preview on the Mac here, or whatever application you have that is the default handler for PDF files. And as you can see, it opens my document. So that is a little different than some of the other applications out there, like Notion. If this was Notion and I dragged that in, what would happen? And embedded that PDF, it would actually show me a window with the preview of the document, and I'd be able to scroll through it. Same thing with Evernote. But in this case, it's a little different because it's using Markdown. There's no real built-in mechanism for that in Obsidian, so as a result, it's just going to give you a little button here that you can click to open it up in the app. It just attaches the file. It's literally just attaching the file. It's not doesn't have any context for it. So that's how you attach files to Obsidian Notes, to Notes in Obsidian Notes. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you like this video, please click the like button. It really helps my channel out. It really lets YouTube know that this video is worth watching. If you want to see more of my videos, click the subscribe button. I do tutorials on a variety of apps like Obsidian, Notion, Evernote, the Google Docs suite, Todoist, etc. And if you're looking to use any of these applications, you should check my channel out because I probably have a video on how to do the thing you're looking for. If not, I'm probably actively working on it. And lastly, if you want to be reminded of when I release new videos, please click the bell. Thanks.